Last year, I took over 23,000 photos. Add that to the video work I did, and I created over 3 terabytes of data just in 2024. In this video, I'm gonna show you how I keep everything super organized and backed up so that I never lose a single photo. So these systems were really built out of experience. Early on in my career, I had a hard drive fail and I lost some data. And there were times that I accidentally deleted stuff that I didn't mean to, and I didn't have a way to recover it. So since those early mistakes, I've really built out a system that is super secure, and I have everything that I've ever shot all the way back to 2008, almost 20 terabytes of data. So I'm gonna show you my exact system. You can either adapt them so that they fit you a little better, or you can just copy them exactly. And I guarantee that if you do it right, you won't ever lose anything. So I'm gonna start with how I have photos organized, then we're gonna get into how I have all my video work organized, and then we'll get into my backup systems and a few different options for hard drives to keep all of your stuff secure. So let's dive right into photos. I use a program called Capture One to import and do all my raw processing. It's very similar to Lightroom, but it has a couple features that I don't think Lightroom has. So in Capture One, I can create a session, which is basically a mini catalog, and I'll name that session after whatever the project is. So if it's a project for a client or a personal project, I'll just give it a good name that is easy for me to remember. And then when I import photos, I have it set up so that it will rename those raw files to whatever the session name is. And then I'll just keep all my projects organized by session and work in that session so I don't get distracted by other photos. And then once that session is completely done, I'll import it into a Capture One catalog for that year. So I have a catalog for 2008, 9, 10, 11, all the way up till my current one, 2025. If you're on Lightroom, I don't think you can do sessions, so I would just kind of skip that step and have one big catalog for the year. And then as you import photos, you can put them into collections and name them and keep them organized in Lightroom that way. Now, one thing that I think is important, whether you're on Capture One or Lightroom, is I don't want the catalog to import my photos into the catalog, because then they're stored in this kind of packaged file and they're hard to access, and the way it organizes them is kind of clunky. So inside this catalog folder, I'll have a folder for the year, 2024, 2025, and then as I import photos, I have it set up so that Capture One will put the photo in a month folder. So if I go into that 2025 folder, I'll have a folder for each month, and then inside those months, I have all my raw files. But then if your catalog becomes corrupted or something's wrong with it, you still have that folder of raw files and you can just import them into another catalog. And you don't have your adjustments or anything, but at least all your raw photos are still there and safe, and you don't have to go dig them out of some corrupted file. A last little note about photos, and one of the reasons I really like sessions is that it's typically just these small batches of photos for individual projects. So I just store those on my computer locally so I can go and work without having to plug a hard drive in. But then I do back them up to a hard drive. And then my catalog, since it's so big for the year, doesn't get stored locally, that's just stored on the working drive. And we'll get into hard drives and how all those are organized in a little bit. But if you have Lightroom and you can't do sessions, you're probably gonna need a working drive to work off of pretty much all the time, because you don't wanna keep that catalog on your main computer. By the end of the year, it's gonna use up all your hard drive space. And then even though those catalogs are stored locally, I wanna make sure I have a backup of them. So I back up all my sessions onto my main working drive. And then once everything is imported into the catalog and backed up to multiple places, then I can delete those sessions off of my computer and off of my working drive. All right, I think that covers photo. Let's get into how I organize my video work. So I just have one main folder called video work. And inside here, I have video projects, which is all my raw data, all the video files, and then inside each project I also have the music for the video that I'm editing, I have some sound effects, I have any B-roll or photos that need to go with it. That's all stored in this one folder that's named after the video. And then I have a folder that stores the Final Cut Pro libraries that I'm currently working on. I have a folder that stores the Final Cut Pro libraries that I'm done with. Once a project is exported and either uploaded to YouTube or delivered to a client, typically I'll leave them in this in progress folder if it's client work and they might want some changes. But then once I know that we're done, I'll move it over to this final folder, and I know that those libraries, they get archived, but they don't really need to be used again. And so they just go through the backup system. And then the last one is just this folder that contains all my finished video projects. For easy reference, I can resend a video to a client, or if I need to watch a YouTube video off of YouTube, I have all those files in here. because video just uses up so much data, I can't store this stuff locally. So this whole folder system is stored on my main working drive. All right, let's talk gear, hard drives, and backups. Your data stored in one place is never enough. Hard drives can fail. 2 places is pretty good, but I actually like 3 or 4 just so you have peace of mind. My main working drive is this SanDisk 4 terabyte drive. I like how small and durable these are, and 4 terabytes is a lot of data for something that can fit in your pocket. So my video files, my catalog for the year, the backup of all my sessions, and then some other business documents that I like to have on hand are stored on here. And then I back that up to kind of a bigger, this is a 5 terabyte spinning drive. It's not an SSD. So not quite as durable, but it's my backup, so I'm okay with that. But these spinning drives are a lot cheaper than the SSDs. So I like those for backups. They don't need to be as fast. Those are the 2 drives that I travel with, so I can have multiple backups when I'm on the road. But when I get home, I have some bigger hard drive options that store way more data, but they are slower and they're more expensive and they're obviously not portable. So let's go over those real quick. For years, this has been my main home backup server. This is a Synology NAS. NAS is just network attached storage. It connects to your computer with an Ethernet cable instead of a USB cable. And this is set up as a RAID 5. RAID just stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. And it's basically multiple hard drives working together as one big drive. So there's a few different RAID levels that just dictate how those hard drives function together. RAID 5 means that when I move data onto this server, it's spread across all 4 drives, and parts of it are backed up on different drives. So if any single drive fails, I don't lose any data. I just pull out that bad drive, put in a new one, and the RAID can rebuild all the data onto that new drive, and I lose nothing. So for that protection of a RAID 5, you lose a little bit of storage space. I have 4 8 terabyte hard drives in here, and I get a total working space of about 20 terabytes. So I like how a RAID 5 works, but this actual box is pretty old and it's pretty slow. The Ethernet connection is just a 1 gigabit Ethernet connection, and so moving data to and from this drive, and if I have to go back and look at some of my archive stuff on here, it's just very, very slow. So I've been meaning to upgrade this. I want to get a newer model with more hard drive bays and faster connections. I can actually edit 4K video off of some of the newer models. So I'm planning to upgrade that soon, but it's just very expensive. These systems are not cheap. And that's kind of the trade-off you find when looking at storage. You either get a big hard drive that's really fast and it costs a lot of money, or cheaper big hard drives that are really slow. So you kind of have to find a balance that works well for you. This drive here in the middle is Amanda's, so we're just gonna ignore that. But because I got kind of tired of how slow this is and it's starting to fill up, in the meantime, until I get that big server upgrade I wanna do, I just picked up this little enclosure. And this is a simple 2 hard drive enclosure with Thunderbolt connections in the back. So it's much faster, and I have it set up as a RAID 0, which means that both of the hard drives in there are working together as one fast drive. So when I write data to it, it writes half to one drive and half to the other, but there's no security in that. If one drive fails, I lose all of my data. So none of these are a final solution. You still have to have one more backup somewhere else. So for that final backup, you have a couple options. There are some cloud services that allow you to upload your whole server to the cloud, and you can't really access individual files like Dropbox. But if your server fails, you can pull that whole cloud backup onto a new server once you replace it. Another option is just setting up your own archive, and that's what I do. So in addition to this, I have individual hard drives that are backed up and just organized per year. And these are just kind of the cheapest hard drives I can find that'll fit a full year of work. So this is a 4 terabyte Seagate drive, and this has everything I've done from 2024. And then once I finish a year on one of these, I will ship it to my parents' house, and my dad just keeps them in a safe for me. So I have an entire archive of my work stored over there off-site. And then to access these drives, you just need a cheap little dock, and this will stick into the top there. One thing I forgot to mention, in my whole photography organization workflow, there are 2 folders that I use once I export images out of Capture One. And I have one called Live Work, and that's basically the projects that I'm currently working on. They might be Photoshop files that still need to be retouched, or photos that still need to be sent to a client. Those stay in Live Work, and then once I'm done with them and I've shared them on social media or sent them to clients, then they get moved into this Final Work folder. And this is basically just another archive of The work that I've exported or I've worked on in Photoshop or things like that, that's all stored in Final Work. And I have those images in my catalog, but sometimes I don't want to redo the retouching, or I don't want to go dig through a catalog. So I can look back at this Final Work folder, and this is kind of like more like portfolio work. It's the stuff that was worthy of exporting. So I back those up through my whole backup system. So with all these drives, let me just show you a quick diagram of how I back everything up. It all starts with my working drive and the stuff stored on my computer locally. Local stuff gets backed up to the working drive, and then I work off the drive for video work and if I need to go back into the catalog to access stuff. And then that drive gets backed up to this bigger 5 terabyte drive or just another 4 terabyte SSD. And then that stuff gets backed up to the server. And at the end of the year, I move that whole year's worth of stuff from the server onto a drive and ship that to my parents. So if any of these things fail, I always have my data somewhere else and I'll never lose anything. To back all these up, I really love a program called ChronoSync. Highly recommend checking that out. You can set the hard drive that you want to move stuff from to your backup drive, and there's tons of options for customizing what to back up and how, and you can even schedule things so whenever I plug in certain drives, they automatically back up and I don't have to do anything. So I highly recommend that program. I think that covers organization and backup and how I do things. I have a few more tips before I go. I would always assume that a single hard drive is fragile. Assume it can break at any moment. So you never really want to trust your data to one drive, because if it happens to fail at that moment, you're out of luck. And along with that tip, just double check everything before you delete. Make sure that you've backed up your drives before you format your memory cards or delete a folder off of your local drive or off of your working drive. Make sure you have those multiple backups somewhere else. I know all this stuff can seem very complicated. I find that it really helps if you get a clean sheet of paper and just write out how you're going to organize things, write out your folder structure, write out your hard drive backup structure. And once you get that all figured out on paper, you can set everything up on your computer, and then you can always refer back to that paper for a while just to make sure you're backing things up properly until it becomes second nature and you remember your whole system. That's about it, guys. I hope I covered everything. If you have any questions, please comment below. I'm gonna leave links to a lot of these hard drives and the gear that I use to back up in the description, so check there, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.